or faced with a circumstance that seems that the solution is abortion, we need to increase the options. So have more access to resources for these single mothers. Maybe do some type of just center maybe training and courses more so around families and different community outreach programs that will help families, single mothers, give them more options versus them feeling like their only option is abortion. Because let's face it, a lot of times it's financially motivated. Oh, I don't have the money now. I don't want to bring my child into a world where I'm not financially stable. So increasing the options, maybe increasing access to funding for some of these single mothers or expecting families, as well as putting an emphasis back on families, I feel like does a lot for that solution, or does a lot towards a solution, I should say. Shout out Darkside Link coming in with another 2. He says, I translated somebody else's comment. Oh, okay, I got you. I read that too fast then. All right. Well, yeah. Back to the conspiracy.
The Brothers of the East was a secret order formed in Greece that eventually set up their headquarters in Istanbul. They practiced alchemy. They studied sacred geometry. They performed rites and rituals incorporating astrology, astronomy, music, and mathematics. So when Hugh de Paynes, a French nobleman, met the Brothers of the East, he was excited.
Yeah, more options for life.
De Paynes was technically Catholic, as most of Europe was, but he had family members who were of the Sufi Islamic faith, which is the more mystical side of Islam. De Paynes had been told of this secret group that possessed and was protecting ancient knowledge. He wanted to meet this group and see for himself. At this time in history, Europe was in chaos. Various kingdoms were rising and falling and warring with each other. In the East, Muslims and Christians were clashing. The world was tearing itself apart, yet the Brothers of the East possessed a peaceful wisdom. They weren't concerned with modern politics. The brothers had a purpose that was much more important. Once mutual trust was established, the Brothers of the East told the European visitors their story. Well, not their story, the story.
Really.
It was the story of an ancient civilization that thrived thousands of years ago. The people were highly spiritual and highly advanced. It was a civilization that was free of poverty. Wealth was meaningless. They devised methods of growing crops so that every citizen was fed. They could control the weather. Droughts and famine were impossible. To Hugh de Paynes, this civilization had abilities that sounded like miracles or like sorcery. They could communicate over long distances instantly somehow. They had a way of levitating objects no matter how large or how heavy. They had medicine that could cure any illness, allowing people to live very long lives. War didn't exist. There was such an abundance of resources that anyone can have whatever they wanted.
When I always hear stories like this, I'd be like, man, where did it all go? Where did it all go? Why I had to be in the time where we lost it all, now we got to go gain it back? Why can't I have been born in the time
man.
Yeah, of Atlantis? Like, what?
Like, damn, we think we advanced now?
Boy,
how far we have fallen.
Man, if you believe in the story of Atlantis.
And what these people wanted most was to pursue their own spirituality. And then they were gone. How, de Paynes asked, could a civilization this powerful, who seemed to be able to control nature itself, be suddenly wiped out? The Brothers of the East said in a single day the ground shook, and volcanoes emerged and erupted. Then a giant flood swept over the earth and destroyed everything.
I know where this is going.
It was then that Hugh de Paynes and his 8 knights learned of Atlantis.
Yahtzee!
Hugh de Paynes and his fellow knights were riveted by the story. De Paynes was a nobleman, a count in fact. He was the Count of Champagne.
La Mouette Champagne. Oh, pardon my French.
De Paynes was an educated man. He knew about Plato and his stories of the island of Atlantis. He thought they were just stories. The brothers said Plato was mostly correct. But Atlantis wasn't just a city or even just an island. It was a civilization that spanned the globe. And each city was connected using transportation technology that again sounded like magic. The story became almost overwhelming. Almost. The brothers said that ancient relics of Atlantis still exist, and they still possess their power. The power to travel great distances, the power of communication, the power to heal, perhaps even the secret to immortality. If ever discovered, these artifacts would be the most powerful and dangerous devices on Earth. DePayne said that any kingdom, any country, any religion would kill to have access to this power. The Brothers of the East agreed. The technology of Atlantis could not fall into the wrong hands, so Hugh DePayne's was offered an assignment. Find the ancient artifacts and bring them back to Europe for safekeeping.
Hilarious.
Hugh and the other 8 men immediately agreed and formed a secret fellowship. But where do they start looking? The brothers said they'll find artifacts under the location of what used to be King Solomon's temple, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The knights would have to act quickly. The Holy Land was a dangerous place. Jerusalem was taken by Christian crusaders in 1099, but who knows how long they can hold it. And there was another problem. It wasn't just the knights that knew about the artifacts. Groups of Christians, Jews, Muslims, they were searching too.
Artifacts?
So when the knights arrived in the Holy Land in 1120...
Yeah, actually, the Vatican holds a lot of religious texts, and it's like a lengthy process for you to even be able to go inside the Vatican and read these texts.
A certain age too.
Bro, you got to be like 70 plus, well-read, scholared, all that good stuff, and I'm just like... So pretty much when you're too old to even get in there or too old to even, I don't know, comprehend what you're reading, then you can go inside the Vatican. But, you let you be one of the high deacons, you're good, though. You're good. You can be in there at 40 years old.
Crazy as hell.
They set up their headquarters where Solomon's temple once stood. They officially became known as Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, the Knights Templar. And the knights played the role of courageous warrior monks, protecting Christians making the long pilgrimage to the Holy Land. But while some Knights Templar guarded Jerusalem, other knights were digging beneath it. Day and night they dug, until one day they struck gold. Literally. The Brothers of the East were right. They promised the Knights Templar that if they dug under the Temple Mount, they would find artifacts that once belonged to the great civilization of Atlantis. The knights found a large box made of acacia wood and gold. There was no question. They had found the legendary Ark of the Covenant. And then they found 5 more. Year after year, the Knights Templar pulled treasures from beneath Jerusalem. They found the Spear of Destiny, the Holy Grail, the Emerald Tablet, and pages of ancient esoteric wisdom. They learned there were 10 arks, though they only found 6. The arks were used in conjunction with pyramids around the world to create limitless energy. This was similar to what Nikola Tesla attempted at Wardenclyffe Tower. If you want to learn how this technology worked, we have an episode that explains scientifically how the Great Pyramid of Giza could have been a power generator.
Pyramid link below.
Shout out Darkside Link, man. He done pretty much sponsored the whole show. Special shout out to you, bro. Thank you for supporting, bro. Happy to have you join the membership program and look forward to see you in future streams. Have a good night, guys. It's time for me to get off work. Appreciate you, man. Have a good night, man. Make sure to go get some rest. We'll be here tomorrow for you, bro. Make sure to tune in.
Appreciate you.
Within the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid is a stone box. Mainstream Egyptology says this box is a sarcophagus to store a mummy. But no mummy was ever found there, and the dimensions of the box are kind of small for a human body. But the box is the perfect size to store one of the arks. The Knights Templar discovered that the pyramids were built for one specific purpose, to store the arks. And the arks, they were built to store manna. In the Bible, manna was a food source that appeared to the Israelites in the desert. It's described as fine flakes that look like frost on the ground. But according to Templar tradition, the Israelites and the Atlanteans before them extracted manna from plant and animal matter and turned it into a monoatomic white powder. This white powder provides energy.
A white powder that provides energy.
I'm weak.
New York in the 80s was wild, eh?
You're thinking about something else.
Ah,
The mana
so weak.
acted as an electrical superconductor and powered the
Goddamn
arcs inside the
hypocrite.
pyramids. The arcs generated unlimited energy for the thriving civilization. They learned these alchemical secrets from none other than the Emerald Tablet.
Emerald Tablet link below.
The
Banger.
Emerald Tablet gave detailed instructions on extracting mana from animal bone.
But the Emerald Tablet was it was pretty much written by, I guess, some Egyptian god who was supposed to be an alien, but he written these Emerald Tablets explaining like alchemy, I guess vibration, spirituality, and all that good stuff. All broken down in these tablets that are real, well, written a long time ago.
The mana could then be used for energy or even for
Predates
healing
the
illness.
Bible, they
Yeah,
say.
didn't the Emerald Tablet also tell you how to become immortal by making the Philosopher's Stone?
Yep.
From eating pee.
Yep.
Yes.
Eating lots of pee.
Yes.
Immortality sounds gross.
It does, but if you want to be immortal,
Ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
nope.
Even if lunch is pee.
That's enough.
How do you even?
Some of these ancient texts even talked about
If you're wondering what he's saying, yeah, they said you had to distill urine like hella times until it got to this black substance, and that would be the substance that would make you immortal.
creating
I
mana
know,
from gold.
like that.
When mana was
Crazy.
extracted from gold, it could be used to make objects lighter, for levitation. Now, think about it. The Ark is a box almost 4 feet long and 3 feet wide. It's made of gold. Gold is heavy. The Ark of the Covenant also contained the 10 Commandments, which were carved into stone tablets. Stone is heavy. Just the gold would have weighed almost 1,000 pounds. That doesn't include the weight of the stone or the acacia wood. Yet it only took 4 men to carry it. By the way, the men who carried the Ark were Levites. Levite. Levitation.
Ark of the Covenant link below.
I'm weak.
The Knights Templar also found very old texts that even predated the civilization of Atlantis. These documents spoke of a non-human race that enslaved humanity thousands of years ago to mine gold.
Anunnaki!
Yahtzee. The Anunnaki come up a lot on this channel, and I promise I'll do a full episode on them. But here's the short version. The Anunnaki were gods worshipped by the ancient Sumerians, but they were actually aliens from a planet
Actually, we can do the Anunnaki for tomorrow's conspiracy hour. It's a long one, though. I ain't even gonna lie to you, but it's a banger story.
That'd be fun.
beyond Neptune called Nibiru. The Anunnaki arrived on Earth about 450,000 years ago, searching for resources, specifically gold. They were trying to solve an atmospheric crisis on their planet. Now, finding gold in abundance, they settled on Earth and established mining operations.
That's where we
Eventually,
came
the
in.
Anunnaki created a labor force by genetically modifying early human ancestors, accelerating the evolution of Homo sapiens.
We need this episode, Chief.
I know, we'll do it, I promise.
Yeah. Your promises and $60 are worth about one night's worth of mana.
Okay. So, the Templars knew about the Anunnaki and how they converted gold into a powder used for healing, levitation, and generating electricity. And it wasn't just the Atlanteans and Israelites that knew
And if you want a better view, a more horizontal layout, go ahead and follow us on Rumble. You can go ahead and watch it on there. Get a nice, good view of it.
about mana.
Nice, good view.
Sumerian texts spoke of an alchemical science called Graal, which you can't help but notice is similar to the word grail. The Sumerians used a substance called Shimana that was used to help the Anunnaki gods power their flying craft. In Vedic, Hindu, and Jain texts, this substance was called Vimana, which again was used to power flying crafts. Polynesian cultures believe mana is a force of nature anyone can extract. Buddhists call it mani. Though the words vary slightly in all these cultures, the definition and use are the same. Mana is a potent substance that allows humanity to tap into something very powerful in nature. And by the way, the Templar cross, you can find that carved everywhere and every time civilization existed. The cross is all over ancient Egypt. And you can even see the cross carved on the ancient Sumerian depictions of the Anunnaki.
Damn.
Templar legend says this was actually the symbol of Atlantis. After Atlantis was destroyed in the Great Flood,
Of the Younger Dryas.
yep, The Templar legend of Atlantis and the Great Flood is exactly like every other flood myth we find in every culture around the world. After the flood, a few survivors restarted civilization with knowledge from Atlantis. The cross was carved in their honor. But not everything the Knights found was Atlantean. Some artifacts were from just 1,000 years before, during the time of Jesus. There were ancient texts that confirmed a lot of what was said in the Bible. But some texts contradicted the Bible. There was no way the Knights could let the church find out what they discovered. The Catholic Church was growing more powerful every year. If the truth came out, it could shake the very foundation of the faith, and the Knights Templar would be destroyed. Besides, much of the Knights' funding came from the church. But no historical document compared to the shock of what they discovered next, an ossuary, which is a collection of bones. This ossuary held the bones of a very famous religious family, all buried together. The Knights found the bones of Mary Magdalene, John the Baptist, and Jesus himself. But they also found the bones of the children Mary had with both of them.
Hold on now.
To call what
If you are of strong faith, yeah, you might want to sign off here. If you're of very strong faith, and it's okay. It's okay. We're not speaking out against no religions. This is just coming from them. But if you're a strong faith, I suggest you leave.
the Knights Templar discovered blasphemous would be a huge understatement. They discovered documents and artifacts that would literally destroy the church. They needed to keep these treasures safe from being destroyed. They needed to keep them from falling into the wrong hands, specifically the Pope's hands. The Templars knew that the existence of the bones of John, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene and their children would mean the end of the Catholic Church. But to rub salt in an already gaping wound, the Templars found something potentially even more threatening to the Church, an alternate belief system. The Templars were Christian, but not in the strictest sense, as most of Europe was, and more importantly, as their king and employers were. Spreading information contrary to the teachings of the Catholic Church was not only heresy, it was a death sentence. Remember, this was all happening at the time of the Crusades. Religions were at war. The Templars couldn't speak about their findings, but couldn't ignore them either. So instead, they hid them, they protected them, and studied them. Some ancient wisdom included blasphemous ideas like the divine feminine, reincarnation, heaven as a state of mind, and
Hold on, the divine feminine was a blasphemous ideal? Is wild. I mean, all right. I
an
got
innate
that.
connection to the Creator. The Knights maintained their appearance as devout Catholics. They had to. Their biggest patron was the Catholic Church. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially the most powerful hand on earth. But in secret, the Knights Templar were Christian Gnostics.
Hold on. So like they believe in Christian values, they believe in God, but they don't subscribe to
God per se.
to the Christian religion, Muslim religion. They just got their own thing going on.
So they believe in the virtues, but not the actual religious teachings, essentially.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, interesting.
Gnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis, meaning divine knowledge. Other cultures call this enlightenment. The basic premise is that
Not being
spirituality
agnostic,
can be found within, without needing an outside institution. So no reason to have priests, monks, saviors, or churches at all. You didn't need them to find God. He's already within you. One of the earliest Templar documents mentions God-given rights.
But you know, they'll convince you. You need to go to church. You need to find God outside of yourself.
Yeah, most people do.
Yeah.
I always did say religion is a good moral compass for the masses, because some motherfuckers out here, bro, they lack critical thought, clearly, when it comes to politics. But beyond that, they can't even think for themselves when it comes to purporting good or bad.
Yeah, I don't think you could ever find true spiritual enlightenment just always trying to rely on outside forces. Like God exists, but he also he exists
within
inside of you.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You know, through prayer, faith, and desires.
Now, Americans use this phrase or something close
Side
to it
note,
in the
I just-
Declaration of Independence.
If I could, real quick, side note, I dislike when some zealots believe that God is 100% of working miracles or working enactment in your life. And I'm just like, don't you know, like, God don't like lazy. You gotta meet that nigga halfway. He ain't gonna give you nothing sitting on the couch. And you could be praying all day sitting on the couch. That nigga ain't gonna give you nothing. You gotta meet God halfway. If you're asking for financial abundance, God is not gonna give it to you while you're in your bedroom playing video games.
Hey, sloth is a 7 deadly sin for a reason.
Independence. But that was in the 18th century. The idea of God-given rights during the time of the Templars meant excommunication or worse.
I have to get that off my chest.
Only the Roman Church could give someone rights. Any alternative was bad for business. And instead of worshiping Jesus, many Knights Templar idolized John the Baptist, who they believe initiated Jesus into Gnosticism in the Great Pyramid. To the Templars, Jesus represented a Christos, a universal consciousness anyone could access, similar to the Buddha. They learned that being born again didn't refer to baptism.
That's really similar to what Billy Carson be saying when he talks about like spirituality. When he says, "Oh, Christ is not going to return," he said the Christ mind is going to return. People are going to be more Christ-like, and that's going to return back to the people. So people are waiting for, Jesus when really we're waiting for people with more of the mindset of Jesus
to awaken,
or the virtues, to awaken. So.
It referred to reincarnation, which someone would literally be born again. With the bones of Jesus, sacred documents, and artifacts from an ancient civilization, the Templars had plenty of evidence to back up their beliefs. They wanted to share this knowledge, but it wasn't the right time. The church was too powerful. They would have to wait.
Obviously.
They would wait until this knowledge could be shared with the entire world and not seized by one pope or one king. So after years of digging, these early knights returned to Europe with the treasures and knowledge and hid it. And then they built an empire. For 200 years, the Knights Templar grew and thrived. Their numbers increased from a handful of soldiers to tens of thousands of men and women. The Catholic Church and Christian lords throughout Europe gave the Knights Templar money, land, and power to help their cause. The Templars created cathedrals, power structures, and systems of democracy. They created the first banking system, a system we still use today. During the Dark Ages, the journey from Europe to Jerusalem was dangerous. Road agents were robbing.
And shout out Seth, man. I'm loving this. God is already within you. After all, our spirits is inside us and our bodies are just the vessels. It's our spirits make sure, it's our spirit. Make sure it's healthy. Yeah, I'm saying it is yours. You have complete responsibility over, your mind, your spirit, your body. Like, these are all things, like, sadly, you were given for free, because if you had to pay for it, you would actually treat it with some respect. But since it was given for free, like your mind and your body, you tend to treat it with disrespect.
The pilgrims of everything they had.
I always say,
so
anything given for free usually isn't valued the way it's supposed to be.
Knights Templars set up locations along the way called commanderies.
For real.
At any one of these locations, you could deposit your gold in exchange for a note. You then take this note to another commandery and exchange it for gold. And for every transaction, the Knights Templar charged a small fee. It was an ingenious system used by thousands of people for hundreds of years. Over time, those little fees added up. Now, individually, the knights were poor. When joining, you gave all your wealth to the order. The order then took care of you and all its members. The treasures and knowledge passed from generation to generation, with each Grand Master responsible for their safekeeping. And for those few hundred years, the Knights Templar were extremely successful at distracting the church from their true purpose. A little too successful.
Oh, and appreciate you, Steph, man. Shout out. I appreciate that message. I feel it. We on the same wavelength with that one.
Eventually, the Knights Templar had their own armies, their own fleets of ships. They had their own merchants, masons, and farmers. They were independent and self-sustaining. The Knights Templar became the first multinational corporation. They had no need for a king or country. In fact, the opposite happened. The Knights Templar were so wealthy that King Philip of France was borrowing money from them. In the fall of 1307, King Philip IV needed financing for another war. He wasn't going to borrow any more money from the Knights. Instead, he would take it from them. The Templars had gone from humble defenders of Christianity to a serious threat to the entire power structure of Europe, the king and the church. And like many powerful rulers, King Philip didn't tolerate threats. So Philip and Pope Clement V devised a plan.
What's that?
Pope Clement, by the way, was born Raymond Bertrand and was a childhood friend of the king. When the previous pope died in 1304, King Philip made sure his friend was elected to what was one of the most powerful seats of power on earth. In short, the pope owed him one. On Friday the 13th of October 1307, 100 Templars, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay, were arrested. For 7 years, they were threatened and tortured to try to gain access to their knowledge and wealth. After making false confessions, they were found guilty of heresy and sentenced to death. But now, there's a plot twist. For centuries, history claimed the church...
I mean, damn, how dedicated do you have to be? It's like, look, I know you're going to kill me, so I'm just going to send you somewhere you don't want to go to, send you somewhere that's a lie, and, oh, I'll be ready dead. It'll be too late for you.
Had condemned the
I mean, the dedication to the secret.
Knights Templar as heretics and eventually had them executed. But in 2001, a document was found in the Vatican secret archives. It's called the Chinon Parchment. The Chinon Parchment documented the inquiry led by 3 cardinals appointed by Pope Clement V. It details the investigation and the charges against the Templar leaders, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay. The Chinon Parchment reveals that the Pope absolved the Templar leaders of heresy. They were allowed to reconcile with the Church. The Pope would allow the Order of the Knights Templar to continue their work. King Philip didn't like this result. He applied pressure to the Pope. Remember, the Pope owed him one. So in 1312, Pope Clement officially disbanded the Knights Templar. The leaders of the order, including Jacques de Molay, were later burned at the stake on charges of heresy, even though they were forgiven of these crimes. But Grand Master Jacques de Molay would enact a small token of revenge for this betrayal of justice. As he slowly burned to death, Molay issued a curse to the Pope and the King of France. He promised them that they would be dead within a year. This was March of 1314. A few weeks later, Pope Clement was dead.
Damn.
According to one account, while lying in state, he was struck by lightning. The fire was so intense that his body was unrecognizable. And if you read up on this pope, you'll agree that this was divine justice. In November, King Philip had a stroke and died. He was 46 years old. The Templar curse was fulfilled.
Okay.
France had now lost its king and its pope, and Europe had lost their beloved knights, or so it seemed. When the arrest order was given on October 13th, the Knights Templar knew it was coming. They had spies everywhere they had known for weeks, and they used those weeks to plan. On October 12th, the night before the arrest order was given, the Templars' entire fleet of ships disappeared into the darkness. And aboard those ships were all the ancient Atlantean artifacts, the holy treasures, and forbidden documents. Jacques de Molay and about 100 knights stayed behind. They hoped they could reason with the king and the pope. They failed in that mission, but succeeded in another. Disbanded but not destroyed, in hiding but not in prison, the Templars formed into smaller groups. They assimilated into other orders. Some assumed new identities and disappeared altogether. The Knights Templar in name ended in 1312, but their mission continued. In fact, it continues today. The evidence is everywhere. Evidence of the Knights Templar can be found all over the world. After they disbanded, they were determined to keep their knowledge and traditions alive, so they created alias groups to avoid detection. In Scotland, they became Freemasons. Portugal, they were known as the Knights of Christ. In Germany, they created Rosicrucianism. There's also evidence of them in the early Americas. Nova Scotia has the legendary Oak Island, with buried Templar treasure and deadly curses. An indigenous tribe in Panama, known as the White Indians of Darien, have pale skin and Caucasian features. Some believe they're descendants of the first Templars in the Americas. When asked about the Knights Templar, the natives called them our brothers. In early Europe, Templars were the first Vikings. The first pirates were Knights Templar. The famous skull and crossbones symbol, the Jolly Roger, That flag was first flown by the Templar Navy to frighten their enemies before battle. One of the most famous Templar symbols is the red cross with a white background. Another is the depiction of several knights on a horse, like this statue in London. Both of these are found in cathedrals and chapels all across Europe. If you read or saw the Da Vinci Code, you may remember Roslin Chapel in Scotland. Pagan and Templar symbols are on every inch of it. Some, like this carving of a knight on horseback, are obvious. This is the gravestone for William Sinclair. It's in the lower part of Roslin Chapel. It specifically says Knight Templar. William Sinclair had no love for the church and provided help to any Knights Templar who asked for it. But it's not just crosses and horses that the Knights engraved on their architecture. There are more subtle clues relating to some of their Gnostic and sometimes pagan beliefs. Sculptures of angels in strange positions are common in Roslin Chapel and are an important rite in Freemasonry. But Freemasonry wasn't supposed to have started until 1717. Roslin Chapel was built in 1446. Over 100 of these little green men are scattered around Roslin Chapel. They're pagan symbols and thought to originate from ancient Celtics. Paganism simply refers to anything that isn't Christian, Muslim, or Jewish. Why would there be hundreds of non-Christian symbols in a Catholic church? Templar legend says they were placed there as a message. Some of the more interesting carvings are of plants that Europeans never should have known about. This is a picture of corn over one of the windows in Roslin Chapel, and here's one of trillium. But corn and trillium are native to North America. Roslin Chapel was built almost 50 years before Columbus sailed to the New World. How would Templars know what these plants look like? Well, isn't it obvious? They were there first. Templar legend says Sir Henry Sinclair, grandfather of the builder of Roslin Chapel, was not only a Templar, but was among the first Europeans to visit the New World. Not only that, but Christopher Columbus himself was associated with the Knights. He was a distant relative of the Sinclairs. Columbus's daughter was married to the Grand Master of the Order. He had access, as all Grand Masters do, to ancient knowledge of the Knights Templar, including their maps.
You still went
Columbus
down there.
knew there was
Oh, man, all that sacred knowledge. You still went down there and slaughtered Indians. Crazy.
something on the other side of the Atlantic. He didn't know what, but he knew there was land and treasure. He knew this because the Knights Templar had maps of the New World for centuries. One of these was the Piri-Reis map, and you know this.
So, AKA, what they might have told us about Columbus might have been wrong. He didn't discover it. That man knew it was there.
Famous map.
To be
It shows
discovered.
the New World and Antarctica hundreds of
You know, according to this story here.
years before they were rediscovered. Piri-Reis, by the way, was a cartographer from Istanbul, which in his time was Constantinople, birthplace of the Knights Templar. Was Piri-Reis a Templar? Maybe. Coincidence? Maybe. But when Columbus wanted to sail to the New World, he first approached King John of Portugal for financing. King John refused, so Columbus went to Portugal's enemies, Spain and England. Queen Isabella of Spain came up with the money first, and the rest is history. But Templar history tells a different story. They say Portugal refused to finance Columbus because they already knew about the New World. Knights Templar had been sailing there for years. Portugal was populated by so many knights that it was considered a Templar nation. In fact, the word Portugal means port of the Gauls, but Templars say it really means port of the Grail.
Ah!
Knights Templar history says they were trading with Native American tribes for years. That's where they got a lot of their gold. And the Templars had a very good relationship with the people of the New World. Columbus knew this. How do we know? Well, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria
Cleveland.
all flew flags with the Templar cross.
Ah!
He knew the natives would recognize this symbol and be peaceful. And they were at first. Sadly, the Europeans didn't return the favor.
Hey, shout out Cleveland, man. I used to live out there. 142nd and Harvard.
The Knights Templars say they were the first Europeans to visit the Americas. Fine. But can they prove it? They can. In 1898, Olaf Oman was clearing land on his farm in Minnesota when he stumbled upon a strange-looking rock. It was a tablet, about 30 inches tall and 16 inches wide. Carved in it were symbols that Oman didn't recognize. This tablet became known as the Kensington Runestone. Oman had it analyzed and translated. The inscription said it was left by Viking travelers in 1362. And this isn't a stone found on the coast. These Vikings were in the middle of the continent. Vikings in the New World, a century before Columbus. Now remember, according to Templar tradition, the first Vikings were Knights Templar. Then there's the Narragansett runestone, found in Rhode Island in 1939, also with Viking runes. Only 14 miles from where this runestone was discovered is Newport Tower. This is a mysterious 8-column structure. It's rumored to have been built by Vikings in the 1500s to track the solstices. The local museum says it's just the base of a lighthouse, but most locals disagree. As far back as the early 1800s, records and legends have given credit to Vikings. But why 8 columns? Why not just build it as one solid cylinder? Well, the answer leads us back to Gnosticism. The number 8 is highly significant to Gnostics. It represents completeness, a divine fullness. Remember earlier when I mentioned Jesus was initiated in the Great Pyramid? Well, there's a reason for that. If you watch the episode that we had about the pyramids,
Link below.
you'll remember that the Great Pyramid has 8 sides, not 4. To this day, Templars are initiated in the Great Pyramid, and they believe that Egypt was one of the main sources of wisdom for the original knights. And if you look, the number 8 is everywhere in Templar symbolism and architecture. The Maltese cross has 8 points and was worn by a medieval order of knights that were attacked by fire. Today, it's the symbol.
On weekend, 8 is the number of money and all that wild stuff. It was actually even crazier because, well, let me see here. Let me see
sources of wisdom for the original knights. And if you look,
yeah, they say that's where Jesus like disappeared to. You know, he disappeared and then he came back, I guess 32 years of age on a donkey. Yeah, they're saying that's where Jesus went, Egypt. Learned some sacred knowledge and then he came back out here healing people and all that good stuff.
The number 8 is everywhere in Templar symbolism and architecture. The Maltese cross has 8 points and was worn by a medieval order of knights that were attacked by fire. Today, it's the symbol of many firefighters.
Yeah, shout out to NYFD, New York's bravest, eh?
Hear, hear. Buildings like Temple Church and Ely Cathedral in England have octagonal features and the number 8 scattered all over the place. You only have to look at a few pictures of Rosslyn Chapel to start seeing the number showing up again and again. Evidence of the Knights Templar is everywhere. Now, we can't cover the Knights without mentioning the Freemasons. Countless rites, symbols, and beliefs connect the two groups almost seamlessly. Masons trace their origins back to the Temple of Solomon, just like the Templars. On Oak Island, Nova Scotia, a money pit was discovered in 1795, along with a Templar engraving. Since then, the Freemasons have been involved in almost every search for the...
Well, damn, well, who want to go treasure hunting for Templar gold, man? Hold on, I think I'm gamed.
Lost treasure. Both Masonic symbols and Templar crosses are scattered across the island. The connection between the groups is so deep that they still see each other as brothers to this day. Another Templar connection is with Rosicrucianism, which heavily emphasizes the rose and the cross, both Templar symbols. But why? Why did the Templars spend so much time and money hiding their legacy? Well, the Knights Templar had a higher purpose. Their ultimate goal was to change the world for the better. They knew the ancient artifacts and knowledge would be a shock to society. But this knowledge was never meant to stay hidden. Eventually, the Knights will share the truth. And the truth might come out sooner than you think. Timothy Hogan is the current Grand Master of one of the Templar orders. He's on a mission to prepare the world to embrace their secrets. He insists that this knowledge is powerful enough to drastically alter our society as we know it in a positive way. Obviously. Currently, all the Templar treasures are hidden in vaults around the world, 7 of which are here in the United States. And according to Hogan, the world is just about ready for their release. He says they'll do it in a way where no one government, no one religion will have complete access to the information. The release of information will be controlled to ensure everyone benefits. Because really, that's the Templars' entire purpose. It has been since the beginning.
And it is a bit strange how like some of these new ideas are just now coming out. Like, I never heard of these ideas in my childhood. All I ever heard about was Christian and Muslim, and that's that, because those are the two religions that are practiced within my family. Anything outside of that, I was mystery to. I started studying, religion more, and, then I pick up what Buddhism is, and I pick up Hinduism, and then Judaism. But going forward, I ain't hear about none of this agnostic belief, none of this Knights Templar, Anunnaki, all that. All this just starts being spoon-fed to us, I believe, over the past maybe like 4 years.
They wanted freedom for the people, physical freedom from the king, and spiritual freedom from the Pope. Unfortunately, it wasn't possible in the 14th century. But today, it could very well succeed. We're at a pivotal point in history where many feel like something is about to happen. They just don't know what. And I feel it too. Now, that might be nothing more than humanity's obsession with death and the end of the world. But maybe it's more than that. I think we all know that we can't go on living this way. Constant wars around the world, the hatred within our countries, the dishonesty of our leaders, the corruption of our institutions. It has to stop. Imagine how different our lives would be if we had access to ancient wisdom and technology. It would be a revolution. We could finally do what Nikola Tesla almost did, create free energy for the entire planet. It would take a while, but eventually, everyone on Earth could access healthy food, clean water, and live long, healthy lives free of illness and pain.
Just gotta start.
It would be a revolution. Crime, poverty, and war wouldn't be necessary in a world of abundance, all due to the artifacts being held in secret vaults around the world. It would be a revolution. That is, if they're real.
Yep, if they're real.
Today's story of the Knights Templar comes from one man, Timothy Hogan. He's the Grand Master of the Order of the Temple of Secret Initiates, the OTSI. He tells the story of ancient wisdom, alchemy, holy relics, and Atlantean artifacts. It's a fascinating story. But is it true? Well, there's nothing to debunk about his story, but there's also no physical evidence to prove it. So it really comes down to Mr. Hogan. Do you believe him? Now, you know what? I'm going to call him Tim because I know he's watching. Hi, Tim. This is the part of the episode where I tell you all the positive and negative things I can about the author of the story. But today we have to do things a little differently. Recently on live streams, I've been cold reading rough drafts of scripts for this channel. You probably assume this, but I have a team of writers, researchers, and contributors because, well, I need to. My cute 12-minute videos about weird animals have now become 40-minute documentaries. I'm just a guy who talks to a fish. I need help. Anyway, when I read the scripts live, I'm literally reading them for the first time along with you. Obviously, they're never final scripts. I rewrite everything I'm given. I also research and fact-check as much as I can. Oh yeah, then this one has to put in his jokes.
Nah, you'd be nothing without me.
Well...
Nothing!
But here's where things took a turn. First, after reading the draft, I was contacted by a viewer. Hi, Stan. Stan knows Timothy Hogan. He felt that the script was unfair to him, that it attacked him too personally. And you know what? I think Stan was right. You can still see the live read on the channel under the live tab, but here's the short version. The script brought up Tim's divorce and a situation he had with a woman who was suffering from addiction and mental illness. She took over his Facebook page and posted wild stuff as him, like she was the reincarnation of Mary Magdalene, so that makes him Jesus, and things like that.
Wild.
And look, those things happened, and it's not a good look. But are they relevant to his story about the Knights Templar? Absolutely not.
I mean,
just like my exes are.
I don't know, man. If you choose crazy, sometimes you may be a bit crazy. Not completely crazy, but you vibe with them on something.
Aren't relevant to the work I do now.
Yeah, you got some real pieces of work in your past.
I know.
I mean,
Some real pieces of work, I tell you.
I know. I went through some rough patches.
Your wife is a saint.
I can't deny that. But that's the point. Tim's personal life is just that. Personal, and I don't really like gossip. Okay, I like gossip, but I don't do it on the channel.
Well, you do it on the live streams.
Okay, that's fine. Let me get through this.
Interesting idea.
So Tim's personal life is irrelevant. But his professional life regarding his work with and as a Knights Templar is relevant. Tim has detractors, people that don't like him, people that don't believe him. I asked the researcher where she found these people.
They're on Reddit, aren't they?
They're on Reddit.
Oh, they hate you on Reddit, too.
Oh, they don't love you either.
Fair enough.
Tim's detractors are what seem to be members of different orders of the Knights Templar or other fraternal organizations. It's actually hard to follow if you're not in that world. Now, people often ask me if I'm a Mason or in groups like that, and I'm not. And I joke that I'm not a joiner. I don't play well with others, because that's true. So when people talk about Grand Masters and 7th degrees and secret handshake grips and all that stuff, I don't get it. I don't impugn it, but I really don't get it. But the people that are in those groups do get it, and they take it very seriously. There's been infighting with these various orders for 1,000 years, and it's still happening. This board voted Tim off, or that group wanted him out. He didn't like what another group was doing, so he left, that kind of thing. Are the internal politics of these fraternal groups relevant to his story of the Knights Templar? To me, no. There are people who call Tim a fraud, that he makes claims that aren't true. Well, I'm going to read you a few of his claims, and these are Tim's words in an email to me. Laugh it up. It's going to happen to you, too.
I'm weak.
It was also suggested that I say I'm a descendant of a Revolutionary War.
Hey, man, shout out Fox Chase. He says, I'm out, fam. It was fun tonight, bro. And I appreciate you for pulling up, bro. I appreciate you for pulling up, Fox Chase. Man, hey. Hey, man, we ain't nothing without our supporters, man. We love y'all guys.
Templar, which is
and
actually
girls,
true.
And girls.
My great-grandfather 7 generations back was General
Oh,
Joseph Warren of the
ladies,
Revolutionary
don't worry.
War. True. He initiated Paul Revere, and he helped plan the Boston Tea Party. He was an alchemist and a doctor, a Templar Grand Commander for the region, and his relationship with Paul Revere was largely based on studying alchemy. Paul Revere was a silversmith. That's true. My grandfather, Hugh Warren, also taught metallurgy at Denver University. My great-grandfather, James Baden Warren, also knew metallurgy, and he was the Grand Lecturer for the Masonic Grand Lodge of Pennsylvania, and he was a Grand Commander of the Knights Templar. True.
Oh,
My
damn.
father was Stephen D. Hogan, mayor of Aurora, Colorado, and had been active in politics my entire life. He was also a Templar. There are highways and convention centers named after him in Colorado. True.
We
Oh,
continue
damn.
covering Colorado first
Ain't
at
he
5. We
official?
traveled to Aurora, when the city hosted a groundbreaking event for the Stephen Hogan Parkway. Project closed about a 2-mile gap between the existing 6th Parkway on the west and E470 on the east.
But even though he always had politics going on,
But don't worry, chat. Even though that story is pretty much over, because I ain't gonna lie, this guy did damn near pretty much prove his stories is all true, his background and all that. Let's get it over to some CIA stuff. Project Gateway, this is what we're going out on. This is gonna be a fun one, guys. I do like Project Gateway.
Technique. Monroe had an
Make sure we're doing anything right here.
This episode of the Y-Files is brought to you by ShipStation. This episode of the Y-Files is brought to you by ShipStation.
Well, that's not what I wanted. But all right.
Monroe had an experience that was unexpected but would change his life. While listening to a specific channel submitted a very unusual and detailed report to U.S. Army intelligence. It was called Analysis and Assessment of Gateway Process. This is a step-by-step guide on how to achieve an out-of-body experience for the purpose of intelligence gathering. But Colonel McDonald's report went much further than that. An advanced gateway participant cannot just project their consciousness to a different place.
And shout out to the Y-Files, man. Shout out. So this is the Y-Files, the Gateway Project, the CIA's classified space and time travel mission. Let's go. Well, system.
They could pull their consciousness completely out of this reality. They could travel anywhere in the universe and at any point in time. The report revealed that our universe doesn't actually exist. It's a construct created by our mind. By using the gateway process, you can exit the construct and see reality for what it really is. The 30-page gateway report was immediately classified for one simple reason. Anyone can learn to do it. Even you. Colonel McDonald's analysis and assessment of gateway process gets right to the point. There are alternate states of reality and other dimensions that exist outside our physical world and outside of time itself.
Whoa, it sounds like I'm gonna need a brain bucket for this one.
Oh yeah, this is the strangest military report I've ever read. I'm surprised it's not still classified. According to the report, we can use the gateway process to access other dimensions. Now, if you think that sounds paranormal or like New Age mumbo-jumbo, you're not alone.
No,
Even Colonel
not.
McDonald was aware that this was the impression his report would give. So he starts off by grounding his research in science. McDonald consults its
Yeah, I've heard of astral projection for a while now. Not really explained, but I've heard about it.
Doc Bentoff, a well-respected biomedical engineer, to help him understand the physical aspect of the process. He uses quantum mechanics to describe the nature of human consciousness, and he employs both classical and theoretical physics to explain the out-of-body phenomenon. But most importantly, the report gives step-by-step instructions on how to have a gateway experience. Follow these instructions, and you could learn to astrally project, visit other dimensions, and even slip in and out of time. This is why the military was drawn to it
I mean, it sounds like a DMT trip.
and studied it for years. If the United States can train a unit of psychic spies that could project their consciousness anywhere unnoticed, that would be very effective at gathering intelligence. Still, McDonald knew his report would be difficult to believe, but he really thought it could be done.
There is a sound, rational basis in terms of physical science parameters for considering Gateway to be plausible in terms of its essential objectives. Intuitional insights of not only personal but of a practical and professional nature would seem to be within bounds of reasonable expectations.
My brain bucket, it's gonna fill up fast.
It is. You better have a spare bucket handy. The Gateway process is a training system developed in the 70s by the Monroe Institute in Virginia.
Okay.
Colonel McDonald, along with other military personnel, went through the week-long training process that anyone can do, even today. But the Gateway report ended with a final warning that nobody really expected. Because this method is accessible to anyone, Colonel McDonald warned that the military should be prepared for encounters with intelligent and non-friendly entities that could exist outside the boundaries of time and space. In other words, a psychic war. Even though anyone can learn the Gateway method, you can't just snap your fingers and escape reality. There is some foundation work you have to do first.
Well, no matter what reality you're in, ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
Right. You have to learn relaxation techniques, meditation, and extreme focus. You also have to set all doubt aside and let your mind be open to a completely new way of thinking. Only once you master these techniques can you begin to comprehend the true nature of reality. Your life, the earth, the universe, and everything in it is an illusion created by your mind.
Solid matter, in the strict construction of the term, simply does not exist. Rather, atomic structure is composed of oscillating energy grids surrounded by other oscillating energy grids, which orbit at extraordinarily high speeds.
To simplify it, everything is vibrating at an extraordinary high speed. Therefore, we're all vibrating on a different frequency, which is one of the reasons why you just don't phase through your wall, your hand doesn't go through your phone, because everything is vibrating at a frequency that's being rejected. Therefore, you are able to hold objects. Best way, simplified it. Best way.
There is no solid matter. Everything that exists is a form of energy vibrating at extremely fast frequencies, from the largest objects in the universe down to atoms and subatomic particles and everything in between. It's all energy.
The point to be made is that the entire
And so is your emotional state. Your emotional state is also contributes to your vibration as well. And I'm talking about your spiritual vibration. Like, one day we'll look into this vibration chart, and I got you.
human being, brain, consciousness, and all, is, like the universe which surrounds him, nothing more or less than an extraordinarily complex system of energy fields. So-called states of matter are actually variances in energy, and human consciousness is a function of the interaction of energy.
Our consciousness is tuned into the frequencies of energy that make up the world that we see. But we only perceive a small percentage of the energy that actually exists all around us. Think of tuning a radio. If you tune into a rock station, you only hear music broadcast on that channel. Now, of course, there are lots of other channels with all different kinds of music, but your radio doesn't play them all at once, only the single station it's tuned into. Our brains are like that radio, designed to filter out everything except for the energy that creates our reality. And just like a radio converts energy into sound, our brains convert this universal energy into things we can see and hear and taste and touch. But none of the solid matter around us is actually there. Our senses create the illusion of matter so that we can experience this reality in a way that we can understand.
Oh man, people do say like we are God experiencing itself. There is that theory. People will go out there and say, hey, no, we're just really God experiencing itself. God created a universe I want to experience. I mean, like, come on now. Wouldn't you?
Now, according to the Gateway Report, we're all living in a shared universal hologram.
The universe is composed of interacting energy fields. It is in and of itself one gigantic hologram of unbelievable complexity. According to the theories of Carl Pribram, a neuroscientist at Stanford University, and David Bohm, a physicist at the University of London, the human mind is also a hologram, which attunes itself to the universal hologram and achieves the state, which we call consciousness.
The gateway process teaches you to turn off the filter in your brain and gives you access to alternate states of reality and lets you escape space-time altogether. And anyone can learn to do this. You don't need to decalcify your pineal gland or spend years at a Buddhist monastery. You don't need a shaman or a guru or mind-altering drugs. You just need headphones. The gateway process is done by listening to sound.
Yeah, but tell me more about those mind-altering drugs.
Yeah. It's funny though. I had her in DMT before they, I guess, elevate. I ain't never taken it before, but I guess they say before they elevate to this different existence, they do hear like a buzzing sound.
In the 1950s, New York broadcasting executive Robert Monroe found evidence that different types of sound could affect the human mind in different ways. Some sound patterns would make you sleepy. Another would make you alert. Some sound can give you anxiety. Other sounds are very relaxing.
Well, people have said my voice is relaxing.
Then you're not reading the comments. Using this discovery, Monroe began experimenting with hypnopedia, or sleep learning. Monroe was convinced that there was a connection between sound waves and not just a person's mood, but their ability to learn and retain information. Now, one night while trying a sleep learning technique, Monroe had an experience that was unexpected but would change his life. While listening to a specific sound frequency, his body slowly became paralyzed. He then started to feel a vibration that became stronger and stronger. Suddenly, he was awash in bright white light. Then a sound, or maybe just a sensation, of a rush of air that became a roar so loud it was unbearable. Then, in an instant, everything was quiet. The vibration stopped, the light dissipated, and Robert Monroe found himself in his bedroom floating above his sleeping body. There was no name for this at the time, but later became known as an OBE, an out-of-body experience, a term that Monroe himself popularized. Though this OBE happened completely by accident, he was able to use sound to replicate the experience 9 times over the next 6 weeks. Monroe wrote about the experience in his 1971 book, Journeys Out of the Body. He went on to found the Monroe Institute and became a prominent researcher in the field of human consciousness. Soon Monroe discovered that while out of his body, he could identify, access, and sustain different states of consciousness. This is done by synchronizing the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Now, even though the brain functions as a whole, its different parts serve different functions, as do its 2 hemispheres. The left hemisphere is traditionally associated with logic and reason, perception, and focus. The right hemisphere is responsible for emotion, creativity, and intuition.
So it's like a sideways mullet.
A sideways mullet? What are you talking about?
A mullet, you know, business in the front, but a party in the back. 2 pieces of your brain are like that. But a mullet is the front and the back, and the brain is left and right. So the mullet is sideways. I'm sorry.
The left hemisphere of the brain tends to be more active in the beta frequency range of 13 to 30 hertz, which is associated with alertness, attention, and cognitive control. The right hemisphere is active in the alpha frequency range, 8 to 13 hertz, which is associated with relaxation, creativity, and spatial processing. The right brain operates much more slowly than the left.
Sideways mullet.
By listening to certain sounds, the gateway process synchronizes both hemispheres using a technique called hemisync.
Fundamentally, the gateway experience is a training system designed to bring enhanced strength, focus, and coherence to the amplitude and frequency of brainwave output between the left and right hemispheres, so as to alter consciousness, moving it outside the physical sphere, so as to ultimately escape even the restrictions of time and space. The participant then gains access to the various levels of intuitive knowledge which the universe offers.
The Gateway Report describes hemisync as a lamp versus a laser. The natural state of the human mind is like a lamp that emits light, but it's chaotic and messy and uneven over a large area. Hemisync lets the mind operate like a laser, producing a focused stream of energy. According to Gateway, when the frequency and amplitude of the human brain are brought into sync, it's possible to accelerate and raise the vibrational levels of the mind. As the mind resonates higher and higher, it can synchronize with the more complex energy levels in the universe. At these levels, the mind is capable of processing information in the same way it processes the energy of our current reality. In other words, you can see and feel and understand these other states of reality as easily as you understand this one. But you can do more than understand reality. You can learn to change it, control it, and bend it to your will, like Neo in The Matrix, or like God.
All right, just want to get a bit out there.
According to Colonel McDonald's Gateway Report, understanding how human consciousness could...
And I usually think they're talking about, like, I guess, all right, so I guess in terms you could say God manifested the universe. Well, can humans manifest their destinies is what the real question is. You know, do we have that? Well, what the belief is that we have that small power of God, which is manifestation, where we can manifest our own reality. And that's usually what they mean when they say, well, there's a little bit of God inside of you. It's just you being able to manifest what your surroundings like, what your life is like. And, you know, you manifest usually what you think about and what you put through your subconscious.
Could exist.
So watch how you think.
Outside the physical body requires an understanding of holographic theory, or the holographic principle.
Uh-oh, let me get my bucket ready.
Energy creates, stores, and retrieves meaning in the universe by projecting or expanding at certain frequencies in a three-dimensional mode that creates a living pattern called a hologram.
The report says that holograms are capable of encoding so much detail that if you made a holographic projection of a glass of swamp water, you could put the hologram, not the water, the hologram under a microscope and see microscopic organisms, actually holograms of microscopic organisms. Now this sounds nuts, but the CIA was onto something big. If you watched our episode on simulation theory, you'll remember John Wheeler and his delayed choice double slit experiment. The video has more details, but in short, Wheeler showed that particles seem to be able to change their state by going back in time. Now, Wheeler felt that the universe wasn't necessarily made up of matter and energy, but instead, the universe is made up of information. Our hologram uses this information to create our three-dimensional universe. And holographic theory is a well-established idea in theoretical physics, and widely accepted by many physicists. I know it's a lot to wrap your head around, and I'd like to do a whole episode on this, so if you'd like to see that, email me or let me know in the comments. Anyway, in order to create our hologram from information, that information has to be exchanged. Particles can bounce off each other, can affect each other's speed, carry energy to each other, and that's how they exchange information. But here's where the Gateway Report goes a step further. It says that this information can be exchanged not just in our universe, but between dimensions, implying that there are dimensions of reality yet to be discovered. His theory raises questions about the interaction between human consciousness and the holographic universe. Like, can our consciousness, which is energy, also exchange information with other dimensions? The Gateway process says that, yes, it can.
Yes, it
but
can.
There's more.
Well, DMT experiences, high-dose shroom experiences have told me, yes, you can. Or, you know, if you mess with those LSDs or acids, which you probably shouldn't, I don't know. You might want to take the more natural route. And I'm not condoning drug use, but if you are going to engage in that, try the natural route. What was it? The mushrooms. Try that one.
McDonald argues that human beings are not passive receivers of the information floating around the universe.
You know what I mean?
We participate in this information. And by training the way we perceive and process the information that creates our reality, we can actually change reality itself. And this technique is called patterning.
The technique of patterning recognizes the fact that since consciousness is the source of all reality, our thoughts have the power to influence reality if those thoughts can be projected with adequate intensity.
Think about the concept of The Secret and the law of attraction, which says that we can make things happen by focusing our imagination on a desirable outcome. But how? How do we allow our consciousness to access this other information? The Planck distance is about 1.6 times 10 to the negative 35 meters, so really small. It's the smallest possible unit of length that has any physical meaning in the universe. At this scale, the laws of physics break down. But what if it's not the smallest? In his report, Colonel McDonald speculates that by using the gateway process to accelerate brainwave frequencies, humans may be able to break the physical limitation of the Planck distance. McDonald suggests that consciousness could, for an instant, enter the space beyond human perception. He calls this clicking out of reality.
It is true that when, for an infinitesimally brief instant, that energy reaches one of its 2 points of rest, it clicks out of time-space and joins infinity. That critical step out of time-space occurs when the speed of the oscillation drops below Planck's distance. To use the words of Bentoff, quantum mechanics tell us that when distances go below Planck's distance, we enter, in effect, a new world.
So, I say we try it. Grab some headphones and let's see what's out there.
Because usually when people talk about the infinity, we're talking about the all, which is God, that which cannot be perceived. Like when they talk about God, what is God? It's everything, okay? It's everything. It's all. It's the all. You know, in the spiritualistic belief.
Okay, don't worry, we're not really going to escape reality, at least not today. I just want to show you how the gateway process actually works. The program combines two techniques. The first is frequency following response, or FFR. FFR involves introducing a frequency through headphones, which the brain tries to mimic by adjusting its brainwaves. The second technique is beat frequency. You might have heard this called binaural beats. This involves playing different frequencies in each ear. The brain then chooses to hear the difference between them. For example, the sounds at 4 hertz are too low for you to hear. But if you listen to 100 hertz through the right ear and 104 hertz in the left ear, your brain can detect and hear the difference. In this case, 4 hertz. And here's how it sounds. This is the left ear. Listen how the tone is steady.
Okay, I'm with you.
Please don't talk during this part. We're trying to focus on the sound. Now, a steady tone in the right ear. We play them together, and you can hear the oscillation between the two frequencies, like a vibrato.
I hear it.
You're gonna blow out their ears.
Sorry. I get excited when I think I'm gonna travel to other dimensions.
Remember, your left brain is your logical and analytical side. Before information is processed by your right brain, which is the emotional and creative side, your left brain takes a look at the information. It filters it and tries to make sense of it before it accepts the information. But your right brain will happily absorb any information thrown at it. Psychologists like Ronald Stone say that hypnosis is a technique that relaxes or distracts the left brain so that outside stimuli have direct access to the intuitive, creative right brain. That's why people under hypnosis are so impressionable. Their left logical brain is disengaged, letting everything through. So if one of those wacky hypnotists gets you to cluck like a chicken, it's because your left brain isn't keeping tabs on the information coming through and your right brain says, cluck like a chicken, you got it.
Your right brain is always down to potty.
It is. The gateway process relaxes the left brain through sound waves. When the brain is relaxed enough, the amplitude and frequency of brain waves can be pushed higher and higher, and the space between your brain waves gets smaller and smaller. And when the distance between your brain waves drops below Planck's distance, it clicks out of space-time.
Up to this point, our discussion of the gateway process has been relatively simple and easy to follow.
Easy for you to say, sheesh.
Now the fun begins, as the almost continuous click-out pattern establishes itself in continuous